Thank you for joining us here. We're really excited to have everybody in our house. Hopefully a lot of you were able to be here last night for the tour and check things out. We love talking about what we do, love showing off all the great equipment, tools that we have. So excited to have everybody here. Thank you. We're going to keep our presentation relatively short to leave more time for questions. We figured probably time's best spent if people have specific questions about things. But we'll run through real quick some of the different, if I can figure out how to use the clicker here.
Do you need an engineer?
I do. There we go. That's us. Actually, we should probably introduce ourselves first.
Sure, I'm Chris Johnson. Sorry. The executive producer here. These guys are the technical guys. We're really excited to have everyone here, and I'm excited to meet with some of you today. As we go through, and these guys go through how we do and what we do and why we do it, these guys are the ones who made everything happen here at the stadium for us. My focus is much more on the crewing, building out of the team, the creative behind everything, and certainly field any questions that relate to that at the end. I look forward to meeting with everyone today.
My name is Mark Leblang. I'm studio and live production manager for the Eagles, so anything that is operationally based in our studio over at the NovaCare complex, it's usually my responsibility to oversee, as well as most of, if not all of our digital live production as well.
I'm Eric Long. I'm a director of production here, involved in a number of different aspects of our production, from the events here at the stadium to our television and digital programming. You're probably tired of hearing me talk, so I'm not going to talk anymore about that.
Good morning. David Sullivan. I'm the building AV engineer here. I take care of all the engineering for all of our systems, whether it be scoreboard video systems, PA system, and I also manage the AV systems here, as well as the television and AV systems at our NovaCare complex.
He puts out our fires. So we figured we'd just kind of quickly take you through a little bit of the details of our renovation here. This building is about 14 years old now, opened in August of 2003. So in 2014, we underwent a two-phase, $125 million renovation to the building. That included the club space we're sitting in now, a number of other aspects of the building, some new infills and seating, and then our control room and LED surfaces in the bowl. So before the renovations took place, we were an SD house. So if you can imagine, as recently as 3 years ago, basically SD production, very small control room, probably, especially when you looked across the NFL, what you'd see in a lot of NFL venues. We kind of hit a point where we maximized really whatever we could get out of that system. So going through the renovation obviously gave us a great opportunity to kind of rethink how we did things, why we did things, place a greater emphasis on our game day production. A couple things you see up there, and I won't read through all the details of this stuff, but just to hit on a couple of the key players in helping us kind of realize our vision. We work with Chris Williams, WJHW as our consultant. Sony and Diversified were our control room integrator, and Panasonic was our LED integrator and TVs. So you can see up there, for those of you who were on the tour last night, we hit on a lot of this equipment. I'm not going to go through all that stuff, but really when we kind of were going through the process of putting together this vision out here, it kind of came down to a couple key things. First of all, our video boards, our main displays are very wide aspect ratio. So it's very important to us. We wanted to have a network quality, A-level network quality show for our fans and for our ownership. But with that aspect ratio, it made it challenging because when networks come through here, we couldn't use all of their angles very easily because they're formatted for a different aspect ratio. So we had to make sure we had a pretty robust camera lineup that was going to allow us to still have really good replay angles, really good coverage of the game. So that was kind of one of the driving forces between having so many cameras. I don't know if you typically see quite as big of a camera build in a venue, but that was a big part of why we went down that road and why we did what we did. It also influenced our decisions in replay, being able to, as we were going through the process, take advantage of some of the 4K technology that was really kind of coming to fruition as we were going through the process. That was big for us, being able to to take advantage of zooming and panning and scanning and things that, traditionally we weren't able to do before, and that we knew because of the wide nature of our main displays that would present some big advantages to us. We're fortunate our ownership really buys into the importance of a high level of quality in our game day production. Really from a fan experience standpoint, making sure that we're providing the best possible experience in the fans, and that's a big push league-wide, making sure that as we have our audience here in the building, that we're providing them with an experience that's comparable to or better than what they would have at home, which of course, as we know, is a challenge. When you're at home, you've got access to the Red Zone channel and the beer from your fridge, and being able to fast forward and rewind with DVR and look at replays yourself. So creating an experience here in the stands that was going to be as good as that experience or better was very important, and it was a big driving force in why we made the decisions we did. Another kind of interesting thing that was going on at the same point, from a football standpoint, we were going through a transition with a new coaching staff that was running a very high tempo offense. So being able to have tools, especially when we're talking about camera angles and replays and things like that, that we can quickly be able to show the best angles and not have things holding us back, was another really important factor in the decisions that we made. Another interesting thing that we can touch on a little bit through all of our production, we paid a lot of attention to aesthetic, making sure that we had a high-level network quality broadcast package that not only was in our building, but that we could use across all of our platforms. So, as we spent time, we worked with Cake Studios, building out a pretty robust broadcast package. We wanted that to work for our programming in the bowl, for our preseason game broadcasts, which we produce ourselves, for our digital programming that was on our website day to day, and for our broadcast programming that airs, on local market here. Wanted to make sure we had a cohesive look across all that stuff, which is a challenge because, I think as you're creating so much content, it's very easy to end up in pockets where different groups are kind of creating different looks and different feels, and it's not all working together. So that also was a big part of this process, was making sure we were going about things in a way that was going to allow us to use this stuff across all of our media. Touching specifically on the LEDs, we decided with the nature of our video boards, which those of you saw them last night, they sit very low and they're in the end zone. So you've got fans that are literally in some cases, 25 feet from the displays. So we knew because of the way that the building was designed, we weren't going to be able to really go a whole lot bigger. But viewing angle was really important. We wanted to make sure that basically that we could provide high resolution content that you could see very well from just about anywhere in the building, and that when you were right on top of these boards in some cases that your experience wasn't suffering as a result of being there. So we ended up going with surface mount 10 millimeter boards, which were the first in the league. We previously were a 23 millimeter discrete product in the same footprint, so it was a pretty significant upgrade in resolution for us. And you can see the specs on our canvases there. Our north board is 5856 pixels wide, and our south board is 4880 wide, so pretty wide displays, wider than 4K. We tripled the amount of our LED square footage on premises, so a lot more canvas to deal with. And kind of what I touched on last night in the tour was, looking at how we laid out the canvas and making sure that basically we were providing the best information to all of our fans, no matter where they were sitting. And then you can see a little bit, we use ClickFX Blaze products to be able to trigger remotes across all those canvases and time everything out. All of our LED mapping is done with Vista Spiders. So that's the nuts and bolts of our stadium production. I'll let Mark take our digital.
Right, so on game day, I think what we've really moved toward when it comes to digital production is basically landing on the philosophy that for the experience for the people in the stadium was going to be the focus of the stadium crew. Meanwhile, our digital production crew was going to focus on the people who couldn't come to the stadium, who are going to watch the game on TV, but where they're watching from would help to inform us with what kind of content we needed to create. And so what we were finding through the use of more advanced analytics than what we'd had before was that most of our viewers of our digital content on game day were actually not local. They were domestic but not local, and 10% of which were actually international. So what we needed to be able to do was provide the kind of content that we thought we wanted to be able to provide them unique access to the team that they wouldn't be able to get certainly the further away from the Philly market they would be, they would have fewer choices. We wanted to make sure that they would come to us and, be rewarded for the decision to do so. So on game days, we have an hour-long pregame show that we produce in its entirety from over at our NovaCare Complex studio in a space that was just renovated last season. It actually didn't come online until week 9 of last season, so we got to unveil it during a big game for us, which was the week 9 matchup against the Cowboys. Got a lot of great positive feedback from that. We have that hour-long pregame show. We do a fully produced halftime report that has in the past been from home games sourced from this venue, and then from road games done entirely in studio. That will change this season so that every halftime report is sourced from that studio. And then we have about an hour-long post-game show, which is, of course, tent-poled by live head coach and quarterback press conferences, and then some really great analysis by virtue of having some former players and football sort of experts coming in to help break down the game and really provide what I think is a global perspective of, not just what happened in the game, but why it's, significant for Eagles fans. And I think that we do a really great job of offering people a complete experience from pregame to postgame because of these content offerings. We're able to do so from home games in large part because we have a really strong network infrastructure between the two facilities that we've successfully leveraged using Teradek Beam, in this case, encoder-decoder pairs, which has meant that with minimal investment, we've been able to establish several paths of communication bidirectionally between the two venues. So again, getting to the point where the people who are watching at home have that sense of being there. And so we've built that into our programming, knowing that if we time it up with what's happening here at the stadium, the folks at home can watch the team leave the locker room, walk through the tunnel, and take the field, and again, be part of the experience that people here at the stadium receive that if you're just watching on TV, you never would have gotten. So what you see here is kind of just a bullet list of some of the key technologies we use over at the NovaCare Complex Studios. Our live productions at their core run with NewTek TriCaster 8000s in both of our studios. All of our routing is done now, very recently, with Blackmagic Design's Video Hub digital routing system, which handshakes with TriCaster. So again, with efficiency in mind with everything we do, we want to be able to run high-quality production with minimal personnel. In some cases, down to 2 people can produce a full studio segment because of some of these technologies that we've incorporated. To that same end, we use Panasonic AWH-U130 PTZ cameras. Those are great because while they have a standalone console that we could use, again, it handshakes with the TriCaster. Our operator can sit there and make tweaks to framing, zoom, focus, everything directly from the TD console. One of the new aspects of our studio space that's, again, only come online since week 9 of last year was a video wall feature that we felt has really added to our production because branding is certainly a concern for us, and making sure that we can compete with what you would see on broadcast or cable stations. The video wall feature we feel like was a no-brainer because we needed to be able to add that dynamic feel to our production. We feel like we've done that. For crews that are over either here at the stadium or on the road in a true road game environment, we use the Live ULU 500 bonded cellular mobile uplink system. That, of course, is sending a video feed back to our studio to be incorporated into the larger ecosystem. And then our CDN is live stream, and so we use their studio software as a dedicated encoding platform. And then I've kind of touched on the Teradek and what that exactly does for us. Similar to the mosaics that they have over here at the stadium, Eric touched on the fact that we wanted to be able to incorporate the graphics package that we'd invested a lot into. We have 2 Chiron IP systems over at the NovaCare Complex that run that same graphics package. And again, because it handshakes with the TriCaster, we picked the Chiron IP because it's a one-click connectivity to the TriCaster. Fingerworks is, of course, known for telestration tools, and so we've had a long relationship with that company to provide the kind of analysis that I was talking about. Some people really do care about the X's and O's of the game, and we wanted to be able to provide that type of content. Some people don't, but the people that do know that they can come to us and they're going to get a really thorough breakdown of plays that did work, that didn't work, but significant to the football game overall. The Fingerworks obviously helps us do that. And then beginning in 2016, we actually tested this product for our NFL draft coverage. Something we saw at NAB is a company called Unity that developed an iOS-based intercom system that allowed us to not only have people in the studios or at the stadium, but also roaming around the NovaCare complex, and even people who are out in Chicago at the draft, participating on the same party line. Just by virtue of having an iPhone or an iPod Touch or an iPad, they would be able to stay in communication, whereas before we were using devices, well, we were using text systems or Slack on game days to communicate with our PR department. All of that stuff will go out the window now that we'll have access to Unity. So here's kind of a snapshot of our digital programming audiences. This is specifically referring to our game day productions. We average a little under 50,000 total views per game day, almost 40,000 unique viewers, and the average viewing time we see is a little over 9 minutes. And we're talking about 9 minutes of actual production time. We do sort of stay live with a stay tuned animation in-game, a kind of passive experience that we hope people will not actively tune us out, but will be there when we're ready to go live again. So it's about a 9-minute viewer time during our actual production. And then, like I mentioned before earlier, our geographical breakdown is shockingly low in my mind of people who are actually here in Philly watching our content. The vast majority of the people who are coming to PhiladelphiaEagles.com or watching our digital programming on our app are either non-local, domestic, or international. So again, that really does inform the kind of content we want to put out there, the stuff that they simply can't get anywhere else.
So I think that wraps up kind of our quick presentation, but we wanted to leave some time here for questions about any of our production.
Yeah, you want to hit that?
Absolutely. Yeah, so the question was, do we plan on incorporating next-gen stats in any of our programming this year? Absolutely. So some of that is governed still by the league. We're restricted by what we're able to use, and they're still trying to sort through what exactly they're going to allow. Obviously, there's some sensitivities there for the collective bargaining agreement, but there are all sorts of things involved with that. But currently, through the NFL's GSIS stats in a box feed that we get from the league, we have a couple different options available to us. We can show like fastest players on the field or who's on the field. They track like who's on at any given time. We've talked to them about other types of things we'd like to see and be able to use instantly in game. That's probably the area that's going to take a little time to grow. As far as incorporating it into our other programming throughout the week, we've had quite a bit of conversation already about ways to use that in our digital programming week of game. And at that point, the league is kind of opening up now to us really this year, a lot more opportunity to use that information. Things like, some of the stuff they discuss is, if you want to look at like a linebacker and the average yards that they travel to make a tackle, or a running back and the average yards that they run to gain a yard of, scrimmage. So I think as the league kind of defines what we can and can't use and how we can use it, that'll obviously influence it. But we're eager to jump in on that.
And the focus for us is adding value, giving our fans stats that really mean something to them. And we're in talks with our sports science team, and they're very eager to share their knowledge and work with our production team to really create content that is impressive and meaningful to our fans. It's not like we're always very intentional with what we do, and we sort of take the fans' perspective of it and say, like, would I really care about this? So that's kind of how we're digging into it and creating our content.
I wonder if you could comment on two things. One would be the video experience, in the bowl or in the arena for things like, Red Zone or other live or on-demand content that I could look at, during the game, what that connectivity looks like. And then second, I was curious about your comments on 4K in terms of making some of that available to fans as well.
You want to touch on what we're putting on the app?
Sure. So we use YinsCam mobile application for our Eagles mobile app, and that integrates really around eight different feeds that can be accessed via any mobile device while you're within our geofence. So if you're on premise and you're on our Wi-Fi, you've got access real time to 8 different feeds. On any given game day, that's normally we handpick about 6 different camera angles, some of which are ours, some of which we're taking from the truck. And then we complement that with the scoreboard program feed and the red zone channel and under the hood. So I guess we're only taking maybe 7 feeds or 5 feeds. We switch it up per game depending on what we have. You know, if we have spider cam or cable cam, those are great angles to be looking at all game. So some of our users have asked for that, and we give it to them. So that's our in-venue experience. 4K, we've discussed distributing it through the stadium to some key areas. For instance, at the other end of this club, Panasonic has a 4K wall for 4K monitors. So we've discussed sending a 4K program signal down there. Quite honestly, our production is 1080i, and so 4K signals, while we have them and they're in our router and we can send them pretty much anywhere, when we do that, we lose keyers, we lose some creativity that we like to do. So it's hard to source out a 4K signal that we really want to display and that's polished. We obviously have the raw feeds from the cameras in 4K, and a lot of that goes to the tape line to be used, but we have yet to find a practical use for 4K in a space like this club or somewhere else. But marketing, I think, is pushing us to put it on at least 1 or 2 displays in the near future.
Is there any 4K on the boards at all as far as even the pre-produced content? Do you have any 4K playback functionality outside of the...
I think our highest content that we use on a game day is about 2K, and a lot of that has to do with the hardware limitations of the processing on our boards. They are larger than 4K, so when you need to show a 4K signal and then stretch it, you can run into some layering issues and some hardware limitations. So a lot of our leveraging 4K is really for the replay experience, the pan and scan. We did a shootout probably the second week we had everything up and running, and we showed the camera signal live in 4K, and then that same camera signal in 1080i. And very well trained eyes could not make out the difference. Very minute differences. So pardon?
60 or 30 frames?
5994. Yep. So not that we discounted it, but it became a very labor-intensive thing to have a 4K workflow, and so at some point there was really no value add for the viewer.
Any other questions? Anybody? There we go.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, for the 4K, the shootout that you had, was it high dynamic range 4K?
It was
HD?
not.
Okay.
No, this was like 2 years ago, so HDR was not a buzzword yet, and it wasn't a technology we'd looked at. Quite honestly, it's a nod to the Christie Spider, how good the scaling engine is in that box, that you can have a 1080i signal stretched to more than double its width, and it still looks amazing.
Chris and Eric, for your creative elements, animations, wipes, front ends, baseball cards, did you farm out for that stuff, or did you actually create it in-house?
Yeah, we worked with Cake Studios, and there was a long process, as with everything with this renovation and planning for it. We had spent a couple of years leading into that, thinking about how we wanted to do that and unveil that, and what was important to us from a graphics package. We talked about the need for us, if we were going to invest that type of money, to make sure that it served all of our channels, you know, from our preseason games to our stadium to our social and digital. And then we worked with them. We looked at a number of different companies and shops, met with a lot of them, talked to them about what we wanted to do, and went with Cake just because they felt right, felt like the right relationship, and they've been great. And we were very involved. We gave a lot of lookbooks in terms of what we had in mind. If you go and nitpick and look at the details of the package that we ended up with, you'll see a lot of influences of the stadium in there, and we didn't want to be overtly like, this is our stadium and that's what the bricks look like. But we wanted it to feel like an Eagles package, subtly, and really tie in with the venue itself. And we've been pleased with it. You know, the way that they were open to building out that package such that our animators and designers could crack open those projects and redesign for our digital platforms and our new monitor wall. And you guys might be able to comment on that, but it's easy now for our producers to crack open, a little billboard and build it out in a new way. So that's been really good for us. And our goal was to use it for 5 years to really get the investment out of it.
If it's like a Sunday night game or a Monday night game, being with NBC or ESPN, is there additional software and technology that is already in-house, or is that brought in, like you were talking about the trailers last night? Does that come from like ESPN and CBS or NBC?
It does, right. So every broadcast brings their own production package, and certainly those two you mentioned are the biggest. For our production, it doesn't mean a lot. A lot does not change, with two exceptions. They're bigger trucks. They have more cameras. They always have new toys, right? So we start talking weeks ahead and talk about the new toys they have and how we can leverage them. So if they've got a super high frame rate 4K camera, we call up Evertz and say, how do I take this camera that I've never heard of, quite honestly, and ingest it into our Dreamcatcher so that we can leverage the investment they made for our fans. So it's a little bit of every week it changes, but for the most part, we're now 2.5 years into this. We know what they're going to bring, what we have. We're going to take as much as we physically can from them, but they bring in all the stuff you see at home, and then we just try and leverage it as much as we can.
All right, we have time for one more question.
So VR headsets have got a lot of attention lately. This is more focused towards like the Eagles app. Is that compatible as of now with the VR headsets? And is there any ways and strategies you guys are thinking of to enhance that experience moving forward?
Yeah, we're definitely looking. We were talking earlier about the feeds within our app. We're looking at and experimenting with a number of different technologies to do 360 VR experiences, not just on game day, but just for all of our events. We do a number of marketing events with Eagles fans throughout the year. And we want to provide that kind of just cool experience. Again, to Mark's point, a lot of our fans can't come to these games and don't come to these games or don't come out to a training camp practice, and we want to be able to capture that stuff, really high resolution, and give them that experience. So we're looking at all of that as to how we can leverage those technologies.
And I think just to follow up on his point, as Chris said earlier, we're trying to be intentional with everything that we're doing. So it's very easy to be enthusiastic about VR and say that we could just do anything. We can put it anywhere and people will love it, and that might not be the case. So we want to make sure that what we're offering is something that is truly value added, and VR is still new, so we don't want to, like I said, over embrace and then wind up seeing that fans really don't love it as much as we think that they will. So we're going to be intentional about finding those value added.
And we always want to provide a really good product. Like, we don't want to put our stuff out there and be like, oh, that's great, but you could have done that with a handheld camera, because all you're seeing is the action in front of you, and behind it, it's just crew and all that. So we've experimented a lot this off season with different cameras out at the OTAs, and had a lot of those conversations about, that's great, but I can do that with a handheld camera. So we got to figure out a better way to provide that 360 view and experience.
All right, that's about all the time we have for this
Thanks, everybody.
presentation.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.